The council chamber was carved into the hull of a moon-sized space station orbiting a dead star. Transparent alloy panels stretched above the delegates like the bones of some long-extinct beast, through which the black breath of the void loomed eternal. On any other day, this might have seemed awe-inspiring. Today, it was just a very fancy room filled with very uncomfortable people. Commander Virlia of Zevon, the Council recognizes your triumph in the galactic conflict and grants you one wish, without restriction, clause, or caveat. Name your reward. The Grand Arbiter's voice echoed across the tribunal in 6 dialects simultaneously. For dramatic effect, he repeated it in binary. A ceremonial gong reverberated once, twice, before the silence collapsed into itself like a micro-wormhole. Virlia rose slowly, the segmented plates of her ceremonial armor humming with ancient sigils and advanced repulsion tech. Her long ears, folded behind her head in a regal twist, shimmered faintly with kinetic resonance. Her eyes swept the room, not out of uncertainty, but because she was trying to remember if she had seen anyone else wearing the same cape. She hadn't. Good. I request, she said, her voice smoother than a synthetic nebula glide, Private Elias Ward. Terran Infantry, 3rd Regiment. One of the council scribes dropped his stylus. Another scribe tried to pick it up but missed and hit the edge of the hologram podium, phasing halfway into a projection of the Zevon flag. The Arbiter blinked all 9 of his ocular clusters in confusion. Commander, a human? He asked carefully, as if there were a chance she meant a planet named Elias Ward, or perhaps a Terran sandwich. Yes, that one. A panel blinked on near her, showing a frozen image of Elias. A man in his late 20s, short-cropped hair, faint scar over one eyebrow, looking bewildered while holding what might have been a portable sandwich heater, or a grenade. No one could ever tell with Terran infantry. On the other end of the galaxy, Elias was ankle-deep in radioactive snow, holding a busted soil sampler, and cursing every single person who had designed boots with thermal insulation that lasted exactly 4 hours. He had no idea his name had just been uttered in a sentence that would trigger diplomatic seizures. Back in the chamber, panic bloomed like a fungal infection in zero gravity. Legal bots scrambled to check protocol. The Arbiter's main tongue twisted into a knot trying to phrase a counteroffer. A Tellurian ambassador fainted, then stood up and fainted again for emphasis. You may choose a hypernova core, the ambassador of Illic offered helpfully. They make excellent jewelry. Or a battalion of loyal clones, offered another. Or a hover yak. Virlia blinked slowly. I already have a hover yak. Its name is Fringel. The silence was broken by the distant squeal of someone accidentally sitting on a sonic chair. Virlia stood tall. This is not a whim. The human showed me kindness during the armistice breach. I never forgot. But he's a human, whispered someone in the back, as if that explained everything. I noticed. They tried stalling. They tried stalling harder. Finally, they tried to redirect with a holographic award ceremony, complete with laser-dusted confetti and a tribute anthem that sampled 7 national anthems, including one from a planet that no longer existed. Virlia waded through the spectacle with the patience of someone mentally calculating the structural integrity of the stage platform. Then she turned and simply said, I will expect delivery within 3 rotations. The chamber dismissed in chaos. Across the galaxy, news anchors scrambled. One transmission opened with, in what experts are calling the weirdest diplomatic move since the Moon Cheese Treaty, while another host simply stared at the camera and said, she wants a guy. Elias didn't notice anything was off until the sky opened. He was eating a slightly burnt ration bar behind a collapsed terraformer when a spherical drone the size of a family sedan hovered over him. It scanned his biometrics, chirped something in high Zevon, then encased him in a soft stasis bubble with the soothing voice. Please remain calm. You are being requested. By name. He dropped the ration bar. By who? The orb hesitated. You know, it's probably better if you see for yourself. The stasis field smelled like lavender and ozone. Elias blinked, twisted upside down, and promptly vomited into his own boot. Virelia's ship, Valoran's Oath, was shaped like a blade embedded in a comet. Elias was deposited in the atrium, barefoot, queasy, and still holding a half-eaten bar. A dozen Zevon attendants bowed as he stumbled forward, mumbling apologies and asking if anyone knew what had just happened. Virelia stepped forward. She had changed out of her armor. A flowing tunic of iron thread draped her shoulders. Her ears twitched as she took in the sight of him, hair windblown, boots mismatched, mouth half open. I think there's been a mix-up, Elias said. I'm more of a background guy, real under the radar. The kind of person who survives because people forget I'm around. She tilted her head. Exactly. A pause. That doesn't sound like a compliment. It is. Another pause. Are you going to eat me? Her expression did not change. Only if you request it formally. Elias decided to sit down. He was given tea. It glowed faintly and tasted like lemon, cinnamon, and static electricity. He burned his tongue but pretended he didn't. She watched without blinking. He blinked 6 times, so he tried, why me? You shared food when you had none to spare. You asked me if I was cold when my people thought me invincible. You listened without agenda. I also called you Helmet Lady. You did. He winced, sorry about that. I liked it. Somewhere on a political frequency, 20 diplomats had simultaneous stress aneurysms. On Valoran's Oath, Elias looked up at the most feared commander in 3 sectors and asked the only question that made sense. So what now? She smiled. Now we figure out what to do with you, Private Ward. Cool, just, if I have to wear anything with sequins, I'm out. Her ears twitched again. I make no promises. Elias woke up to the sound of something humming a lullaby in a language with no vowels. For a second, he thought it was a dream. Then he opened his eyes and remembered. He wasn't in his bunk on the Terran recon vessel Galahad. He wasn't even in Terran space. He was on a Zevon flagship that looked like a holy dagger someone threw into space and forgot about. The bed was too soft. The ceiling moved like slow ink in zero gravity. A spherical droid hovered beside him, blinking politely. It looked like a metal coconut with attitude. Good morning, Private Elias Ward, the droid said. I am SIR, Sanitation, Intelligence, and Refreshment. You may call me sir. Everyone does. Why would I call it talking volleyball, sir? Because I control the waste management systems on this deck, and I take things personally. Elias groaned and rolled out of bed. The floor adjusted its texture to match the soles of his feet. That part was cool. Less cool was the robe the attendants had left for him. Long, silvery, covered in fractal patterns that blinked when stared at. It felt like wearing a snarky bedsheet. He emerged into a hallway that whispered secrets in his ear every time he passed a light fixture. Probably just architectural ambience. Probably. At the end stood Virelia, dressed in a tailored diplomatic uniform that managed to be both intimidating and extremely efficient at outlining her superiority. Her long ears perked slightly at his approach. You are late. I didn't know there was a schedule. There is now. They walked in silence down a corridor lined with statues. Each one depicted a moment of Zevon victory, from the taming of black hole serpents to the conquest of the Auric Nebula. Elias paused in front of one that showed a Zevon warrior standing atop a heap of defeated drones, raising a plasma spear to the sky. That one looks like you, he said. It is me. Oh, a nice pose. It was necessary. The explosion behind me was real. They entered a chamber shaped like a Möbius strip flattened into perceptual alignment. The air hummed with raw computation. Dozens of Zevon strategists stood around a floating holomap of the Orion Fringe, plotting trade routes, peacekeeping deployments, and diplomatic seating charts. Everyone turned as they walked in. No one bowed, but a few blinked very slowly, which in Zevon etiquette meant either respect or extreme discomfort, possibly both. Elias waved. Hey, I'm the reward. Silence. Violia led him to a smaller room, a chamber of reflection, she called it. It looked suspiciously like a fancy office with zero-gravity beanbags. There, she pulled up a projection of their shared history. You offered me food on Arden 7, she began. You broke protocol. I also offered it to a wild dog 20 minutes later. You did, I bet you. Still have the scar, want to see it? No, she turned to face him fully. You were kind without calculation. That is a rare commodity in the galaxy. I was hungry and didn't want to eat alone. Same thing. Elias leaned back. So what now? Am I supposed to follow you around? Be your emotional support Terran? That depends. On what? On how well you do in the assimilation protocols. His eyes widened. Please tell me that's not a euphemism. It is not. 3 hours later, Elias found himself in a cultural immersion chamber, which felt suspiciously like a game show designed by an ancient AI with unresolved emotional baggage. First, he had to interpret a Zevon opera. Then he had to navigate a virtual marketplace without offending the holographic merchants. He accidentally insulted someone's grandmother by blinking with the wrong eye. That's a warning offense, the simulation warned. Next time you may be married. Violia watched from the observation bay, impassive, or perhaps enjoying herself. Her ears twitched like antennae catching a private joke. The final test involved piloting a micro-shuttle through an asteroid belt designed by an abstract artist. Elias dodged, swerved, and somehow ended the simulation parked upside down in a decorative fountain. Congratulations, said the instructor drone. You have achieved a passing score in cultural relevance. Really? No, but we admire your enthusiasm. Later, over dinner, which included a dish that tried to reassemble itself on his plate, Elias asked, So what do your people actually think of this? Violia sipped her nutrient vapor. They think I've lost strategic clarity. Have you? I might have. They sat in companionable silence. Around them, the dining hall glittered with soft light and quiet motion. Far away, a delegation of worm-like ambassadors from the Lernth Axis were discussing trade embargoes through a series of synchronized wiggles. Elias poked at his food. This is a lot. I understand. But I'll say this, your tea's better than ours. It's extracted from moonroot, filtered through crystalline pressure veins. We use a bag and regret. A smile tugged at the corner of her mouth. Later still, he returned to his quarters, where Sir the droid had left a new robe. This one shimmered like deep ocean water and played calming whale sounds from a gas giant. I don't think I'm cut out for this, Elias muttered. Sir Hubbard, you are statistically below average in 90% of Zevon metrics, but you are in the top 1% for unpredictability. That's supposed to be comforting. No, but it's honest. He lay on the bed and stared at the ceiling, which now displayed a map of unfamiliar constellations. Somewhere out there, he figured, people were still yelling into microphones about his sudden disappearance. Somewhere else, someone was probably trying to clone him. But here, on this absurd, beautiful ship, he had been chosen. Not for power, not for looks, not even for tactical value. Just because, once, he saw someone who looked tired and gave her half a protein bar. And for now, that was enough. The galactic press conference was scheduled for precisely 800 coordinated star time. Elias arrived at 8:07, trailing bits of lint from a robe he'd accidentally washed with a static reactive cleaning cloth. The result? He sparked faintly with every step, which he tried to pass off as confidence. He stepped onto the dais beside Violia, who was perfectly poised and entirely unbothered by his entrance. 100 different cameras hovered in the air like a curious school of jellyfish, broadcasting live to 7 systems, 2 subdimensional feeds, and 1 underground pirate network that played everything with disco sound effects. Do I say something? Elias whispered. You already are. The microphones here detect thought vibrations. He froze seriously. No, but your face is entertaining when you panic. She turned to face the crowd. Delegates from half the quadrant filled the amphitheater. A holographic ticker floated above their heads, scrolling headlines in every major language. Commander Virellia confirms her human is still alive. Galactic Cultural Board calls for ethical review of reward claim. Human cited in Royal ROBS. Fashion or captivity. A journalist from the Andromedan Quorum raised a flag. Commander, is it true your decision has destabilized multiple alliance treaties? Yes. Do you care? No. Another journalist from Terran Worldstream leaned forward. Private Ward, are you being held against your will? I mean, I got offered space pancakes. That's not really the behavior of a hostage situation, is it? A third reporter, a sentient vapor wearing a monocle, drifted into focus. Do you believe love is a strategic weapon? Elias blinked. What kind of question is that? Do I get a pass? Is this a quiz? Virlia stepped in smoothly. The bond we share is not a weapon. It is a variable. That sounds even more threatening, Elias muttered. She didn't disagree. After the conference, they retreated to the observation deck, where the ship's outer panels projected a filtered view of a nearby pulsar storm. Electric waves danced through the dark, wrapping around the ship like an aurora with a bad attitude. I'm never going to get used to this, Elias said. You don't need to. I think some ambassador wants to put me in a zoo. Only one. Well, two now that I think about it. One offered me a banana. I don't even like bananas. She tilted her head. It's customary on his world. Bananas are sacred, he might have proposed. Oh good. Galactic marriage proposals via fruit. I'll add that to my resume. They stood in silence for a while. Then Elias asked the question that had been burning a hole in his brain since arrival. Why did you really choose me? I mean, there were 1,000 better options. There were better soldiers, better diplomats, better minds, but none of them gave without expectation. He glanced at her, all that over half a ration bar. That bar fed me through an ambush cycle. It saved my life. I dropped it, you picked it up. That's not exactly heroic. You looked me in the eye when you walked away, like I mattered. He looked down at the floor, which obligingly dimmed itself for dramatic effect. Well, you're welcome, I guess. That night, Elias attended his first official function, a diplomatic reception between Zevon Command and a delegation of Cygnian emissaries, who communicated primarily through synchronized sneezing and ultraviolet blinks. He was given a translation implant, which promptly malfunctioned and caused him to interpret every sneeze as a direct insult. He accidentally challenged their matriarch to a duel. Virlia handled the situation by offering him a ceremonial glove, used in Zevon tradition to diffuse public embarrassment, and declaring him a functioning anomaly. The Cygnians sneezed in unison, which apparently meant they approved. Later, they returned to her quarters for a debrief. Elias sat on a couch shaped like a sleeping stingray and clutched a cup of rehydrated starlight tea. I think I insulted 3 cultures, got engaged to a jellyfish, and misnamed your first strategist Snugglehorn. You're doing well. This is me doing well. Extremely. He leaned back. I think I'm starting to understand why humans never made it past the moon without someone yelling. Your species thrives in chaos. We also panic in revolving doors. That explains your training simulations. Oh no, you've seen those. All of them. He groaned and covered his face. You fell out of a drop shuttle while yelling surprise. It was a tactical distraction. It was a surprise. That part was accurate. The next morning, Virlia took him on a tour of the ship's internal archives, a crystal chamber suspended in a gravitational bubble where memory nodes floated like dandelion seeds in still air. With a wave of her hand, she summoned a memory, a war-torn planet, smoke and fire, a broken battlefield littered with silent mechs and twitching drones, a small, helmeted figure offering a bar of food to a tall, exhausted alien woman crouched behind a collapsed wall. The scene paused. Elias stared. That's me. Yes, I was just trying not to get shot. You look tired. You look terrified. Was I? Yes, but you stayed anyway. He turned to her. Do you remember everyone who's kind to you? No, just the ones who meant it. He didn't know what to say to that. So he just stood there in the suspended quiet, surrounded by a history that wasn't his, and a moment that now somehow was. Outside, the ship drifted past a field of quantum ice. A storm froze in mid-collapse. Inside, Elias rubbed his temple and muttered, "This is getting way too poetic." Violia's ears flicked in amusement. It's the ship. It encourages introspection. Does it also serve coffee? Only the introspective kind. I have regrets. I know. The first sign that something was wrong came when Elias' cereal started blinking. He stared into the bowl, then poked one of the cubes with his spoon. It let out a faint hum and tried to rearrange itself into a low-resolution map of a continent he didn't recognize. "Violia," he shouted down the corridor, "why is my breakfast alive?" A moment later she appeared, perfectly calm, as if this was normal behavior for grain. "Intelligence leak," she said. "The food synthesizers occasionally draw from surveillance archives. Eat around the sensitive data." Elias blinked. "You mean I'm being fed classified information?" "Only during breakfast. I had a dream like this once. It ended with my omelet testifying in court." She tilted her head. "What's an omelet?" "A mistake involving too many eggs and bad judgment." "I see, like galactic border policy." Moments later, the emergency lights flickered to blue and a voice boomed across the ship. "Diplomatic boarding in progress. Repeat, diplomatic boarding in progress. Hide your controversial decisions." Elias leaned out of the dining alcove. "Are I the controversial decision?" "Yes," Violia said. "Well, great. Do I need to put on pants?" "Strongly advised." The delegation was already in the docking ring by the time they arrived. Violia's ears stood tall in a formal posture of neutral curiosity. Elias' pants had one leg tucked into a boot and one not, because he hadn't realized Zevon fabric required sinking to muscle temperature before locking. At the front of the delegation stood Ambassador Threx of Terran Command, looking like he chewed through 4 styluses before breakfast. He squinted at Elias, then pointed. You are not supposed to be wearing royal insignia." Elias glanced at the robe he hadn't realized was royal. "I thought it was just fancy pajamas." "It's ceremonial attire for consort-class dignitaries." "Well, I do lounge with great dignity." The ambassador turned red, which clashed poorly with the ambassadorial sash. "This is not a joke, Private. Your presence here has generated 17 diplomatic protests, 4 minor trade disruptions, and 1 cult movement on Midas 4. I didn't ask for the cult. That was just a misunderstanding involving a vending machine and a halo effect from poor lighting." Violia stepped forward. "Private Ward is here by my request, as is my right. We're requesting him back." "Request denied." Elias raised a hand. "Can I vote?" "No," both of them said. The tension crackled like plasma through a conduit. Behind Threx, one of the Terran aides activated a portable neural dampener, probably in case anyone got emotional. Violia didn't flinch, but Elias felt a buzzing in his teeth. "We're here to extract him under Protective Clause 47, Threx said. "Voluntary or otherwise." Clause 47 was revoked in the Mercurial Accord. "Only on Tuesdays." "It is Tuesday, not on Terran Prime." Violia raised one eyebrow. "We're 12 sectors from Terran Prime." "It's a conceptual Tuesday." Elias slowly raised both hands. "Okay, I love a good space legal brawl as much as anyone, but how about I just not go with you and we call it a day? You are a Terran citizen. I'm also extremely unimportant." "That's the problem," the ambassador snapped. "You're a symbol now. People think you're a prize." Elias stepped forward, lowering his voice. "Do I look like a prize to you? I once got stuck in a revolving door for 7 minutes, alone." Violia looked pleased. "8, actually. I checked the logs." Threx turned to her. Do you truly intend to risk alliance stability over him? I don't risk, I choose. You don't think this will have consequences? Everything has consequences. This one just happens to be interesting. Back on the main deck, Violia paced while Elias watched his serial finish decrypting. It was now replaying his last dental appointment. You know, he said, this might be a good time to reevaluate our situation. You wish to leave? No, I wish to stop being the center of interstellar chaos. But clearly, that ship sailed, exploded, and been reconstructed as a museum exhibit. She paused. You handled yourself well. I handled myself barely. I made a joke about broccoli to a politician who was a broccoli. I know. He invited you to dinner. I didn't know he meant literal dinner. She smiled, which in her case involved the faintest curl of one lip and a shimmer across her ears. Still, you held your own. I panicked and tried to escape through a ceremonial gong. Creativity is a form of leadership. That night he lay awake, staring at the ceiling while it played a slow loop of star patterns. The ship dimmed its lights automatically, humming lullabies based on his biometric rhythms. Sir, the droid hovered in and whispered, "You smell like political drama." I am political drama. Shall I activate the pillow that comforts you with the voice of a deceased parent? No, but thanks. You're welcome. Also, the broccoli ambassador sent flowers. Elias sighed and rolled over. His thoughts swam through the events of the day. Ambassadors, warnings, politics, ancient clauses written in languages with no vowels. But through it all, he kept returning to the same memory. A battlefield, a shared meal, a woman with tired eyes who hadn't expected kindness. He wondered if that really was enough to bind two fates together. Then he remembered her voice when she'd said, "I choose." Maybe, he thought, that was how peace always started. Not with declarations, but with decisions. And maybe, just maybe, someone choosing you was the most disruptive act in the universe. The official declaration of peace between the Zevon Imperium and the Terran Coalition was signed using a ceremonial stylus that doubled as a neural stimulator if held incorrectly. Elias discovered this firsthand during the opening handshake when the pen shocked him into blurting out the phrase "tooth weasels" in front of 17 galactic dignitaries. The room paused. Violia, without missing a beat, calmly translated, a Terran blessing of prosperity and resilience. The crowd nodded solemnly. The Illic ambassador clapped. Someone cried. After the ceremony, Elias stood on the observation deck overlooking a holographic recreation of old Earth's aurora borealis. Violia joined him, silent as usual until she was. You survived. Barely. I still think I'm allergic to high-level diplomacy. Every time I hear the phrase intergalactic interest, I break out in sarcasm. It's a defense mechanism. I've got a lot of those. You're also developing new ones. Maturity, for example. He turned to look at her. Was that a compliment? It was an observation. I'll take it. Below them, delegates from previously hostile systems exchanged microgifts, tiny encrypted tokens symbolizing goodwill. One Zevon child gave a Terran diplomat a handmade miniature of Elias made from recycled battle drones. The likeness was shockingly accurate, down to the slightly confused expression and emergency snack pouch. Elias watched in silence, then asked, "Do you think this actually changes anything?" "Yes." "Even though most of them still think I'm an interspecies stunt." "You're not. Then what am I?" She glanced at him. "Proof." "Of what?" "That some bonds are stronger than politics." He let that settle, then muttered, "That's dangerously poetic. You should be careful with that kind of talk. People will start expecting us to solve more galactic issues." "I intend to." "Oh no." Later, Elias stood in front of a small Terran delegation. They were presenting him with a plaque. It was overly large, comically heavy, and had his name spelled slightly wrong. Elio's wand, exemplary civil participant. He accepted it anyway. The lead official handed him a folder labeled post-integration placement. It contained 6 offers, ambassadorial aide, Terran liaison, cross-cultural negotiator, reality show consultant, defense mascot, and motivational speaker for nervous recruits. Elias picked the seventh option, none. I'm not here to be a mascot, he told them. Or a message, I'm just here. There was a pause. Then someone in the back coughed and said, "That's the most human thing I've ever heard." He was offered honorary Zevon citizenship. The ceremony involved standing under a prism while the ship's AI sang his psychological profile. He didn't understand most of it, but it ended with a confetti burst and a hug from a diplomat who might have been composed entirely of light. Violia hosted the final peace reception in her personal arboretum. It hovered in artificial gravity, with soil from 8 worlds and a tree genetically designed to hum Mozart. Guests mingled. The drink machine developed sentience halfway through the night and began writing memoirs. Elias pulled Violia aside. "You know, when this started, I thought I was being kidnapped." "You were." He blinked. "Wait, seriously." "Metaphorically." "Oh, good. That clears everything up. You adapted." "I'm still adapting." "That's the point." They stood quietly as a new message began broadcasting across the galactic net. A joint statement from Zevon and Terran High Command, authored by both species, declaring their shared intent to maintain cooperation, encourage cultural exchange, and stop using humans as unexpected plot twists. Elias leaned against the balcony. "So what happens to us now?" "We find out. I mean, am I staying, going back to Earth?" "You have options." "I hate options." "Then choose one. That's what started this." He exhaled. "I guess I already did." Time passed. The ship became a diplomatic vessel. Elias took a position as unofficial liaison, which mostly involved explaining Terran jokes and why humans cried at weird moments in movies. He also started a hollow podcast called Mediocre Man in a Maxed-Out Universe, which gained popularity in 3 languages and was banned in a 4th for excessive candor. Violia continued her work as a peace architect. She brought former enemies to the negotiation table by offering unexpected gifts. Once, an ancient recipe for soup. Another time, a recording of Elias falling off a hover platform while singing karaoke. She called it tactical vulnerability. One day, while they were refueling on a moon with 3 suns and no atmosphere, Elias sat beside her on a ridge of pressurized stone and said, "Do you think people still wonder why you chose me?" "Yes, and you're still okay with that." "I chose once, I'll keep choosing." He nodded, quiet for a moment. Then, "Can I tell you something without you making it into a profound life lesson?" "Unlikely, but proceed."